1920, this was a sleeping porch, and this was a bedroom off the sleeping porch. This hole right here would have been a window into the parlor of the plantation until, like I said, 1920. However, this is a perfect spot for a modern kitchen. These bricks you see here, well, is a stove alcove. That would be where my range will be at. Those bricks are all made, were slave made at the Gibbs house in 1845. And what's interesting about a lot of those bricks from the Gibbs house is they had fingerprints in them from the slaves that made them. So if you look right here, I showcased two of them. We can see perfect handprints of the makers of the bricks in 1845. And notice they're very small because children were probably too young to work the fields at the time, so they probably had them making bricks. No two of those bricks are alike. There's not one of them square, shaped right, or anything else, but at the same time, they're beautiful. This actually will be my island. This was made here by the Shadow family in about 1920, and will receive a new marble top. It's used as a buffet in the house for their dining room, but I'll use it as my island here. I'll have a nice pantry, a nice breakfast area, and then this whole thing will be the kitchen all the way up here. So I didn't disrupt any of the historical integrity of the house. I simply took an addition on the house already and made it, better suit a more modern setting. As we go into this next room, originally plantation parlor, this will be my dining room, however, though. So you see how the woodwork and everything drastically changes in here. So there's hand-painted wallpaper in here. I just recently removed it about 3 months ago. There's one little tiny piece up there. It was a red and burgundy, red, brown, and cream damask. I'm having it replicated in Pennsylvania, and I'll have it rehung on the walls in here. So it'll look just like it did in 1850. I'll put period lighting in here. Everything in this room, from the lights down to the candlesticks, mirror, everything will be pre-1850.
Okay. And this house was built in?
This portion of the house was built in 1857. Once he got here, the log part was built in 1850. 1816, 1850 by Calvin Leary, the dog trot. Then when he got some money from farming cotton and stuff, had enough money, then he added this very elaborate L wing on 1857. So notice this door. This door is actually pine, but it's faux painted to look like walnut. So it's all the wainscot around the walls, and the mantel's faux painted to look like marble. They wasn't as good at faux painting the marble as they were as the wood, but it's still original. I wouldn't dare change it. Notice once again, large part-time floors in here, ceiling boards run the entire length of the thing.
And this is
This is the original 1921 Shadow family sink. It will be refinished by Man and Rustin and put in my kitchen. So, yes, no.
And what?
That's the marble that went on top of that. That's the marble that went on top of the thing. I don't want pink Carrara marble, so I'm gonna have a piece of white cut to match my countertops. This doorway that you see right here that goes into the next room was not there. The Shadows family cut it in there to make the two rooms you pass through them. This is Mr. Shadow's office. Let me go real quick and talk about the Shadows family because I've kind of neglected it because it's easy to get caught in the whole, romanticism of the plantation life. The Shadows family got here in 1906. They had the largest nursery in Louisiana, one of the largest nurseries in the South. They grew camellias, azaleas, anything imaginable that was a horticultural plant back then. They also grew tons of strawberries. So he had to have a large office, to have, there was actually 2 large safes in there. There was all kind of things in there that was, pertaining to everyday functions of the nursery. So he took the original dining room of the plantation made into his office. And anyway, the Shadows family had a nursery here successfully to the 1960s. And a lot of the roses, like in Jackson and Perkins, that we love today, Mr. Shadows bred them right here at the house. He did a lot of experimentation with grafting citrus and pecan trees. When we go outside a little while, those pecan trees that are grafted look very funny. They have like almost a donut around them. That's because he grafted pecans on hickories and walnuts, trying to find a variety that could sustain the heat and the drought that we have commonly in Louisiana. So we'll walk into his office, which was originally the dining room. This will be walled back off when I move in here, though.
Okay.
The only way to access this room we're going into now will be via the front door like you originally did. This will be a guest bedroom or a bridal suite when I move to the house. But we're going into the original dining room right now.
Okay, and are you entertaining the idea of a bed and breakfast?
I am entertaining the idea of a bed and breakfast. Also, like I said, I already had people say they want to get married here and stuff. So if they did, the bride would be in this room and the bed and breakfast would be in here because that way they only have one door in and out. Nobody will bother them. They're right in the dining room, the kitchen where they eat at. I'm on one side of the house. I'm not above them or below them. They have all this to themselves. Has a large closet in this room. That's weird. Most old houses do not have closets, especially plantation houses. That's because in the dining room he had silver, linens, and china that he could keep locked up in there because they just were paranoid back then. In here, well, like I said, will be everything in here would also be 1850s furniture, actually be from the 1820s. Have a large canopy bed that would go in here. That is the original 1857 gray wash on the ceiling. Never been altered. All I do is clean it up, put some nice crown molding in here, and leave it just like it is. That's the original paint in this room. Shadows family never did anything. There was actually a wallpaper in here. It was a fleur-de-lis pink and green damask. I have pieces of it as well, but for right now, the wood cleans up really well. As you can see where I scrubbed over in the corner, I think I'm gonna leave it with the wood for right now. I can always paper it later on. But
What about your exterior walls? What are you gonna do with the exterior?
the exterior walls are being covered. They'll be covered in clapboard in the next few weeks.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And then, like I said, there are large closet here, and then I added a large bathroom over there, and that'd be the nice bathroom that go for this suite. This mantel that you see right here is, once again, not original to the house. That's a Victorian mantel, actually from a nice house in Shreveport on Line Avenue. That will be the mantel that'll be in that bathroom and burn electric logs for whoever's taking the bath or shower in that bubble bath that'll be in there. So. And this one included. There's actually another one here in Dubberly too. You notice
One
this
other like this?
in regards to this architectural feature I'm
Okay,
going to show you.
okay.
You see how the columns are not connected to the house?
Yes.
That is called a Carolina rain porch. And even the storms we've had this spring so far, I've been down for every one of them when the wind is really whipping hard. Rain does not get on this porch. It has a draft where it does not get on here. This is the original 1857 porch boards on this porch, and look at them. They're in amazing shape because it doesn't get wet. So this whole part of this porch from 1857, I'll have to replace but one board at the very end. That's because some of those dropped on it and broke it. So now the front porch of the log house is a different direction, and I'll have to replace that.
Now, how many structures like this are in Northwest Louisiana?
There's
or
none.
North Louisiana?
This is the oldest house in North Louisiana, with a few in Natchitoches being older. This is the oldest house in Webster and Claiborne Parish by 20 years. That log cabin is. As a whole, plantation complexes do not exist in North Louisiana anymore. Every once in a while you get a house that was a plantation, but not one to this level. Calvin Leary did not grow cotton. He grew cotton, but he did not grow just cotton. Everybody else was growing just cotton. In the 1850 census, Calvin Leary was worth $10,000. He had that on hand. That'd be the equivalent of, several $100,000 now. Plus he had $10,000 in gold. He was a millionaire for standards back then. The reason why this house isn't like a big, beautiful house on River Road in South Louisiana is because we didn't have the artisans up here to do that kind of things. We didn't have the professional brick makers. We didn't have the professional plasterers. We didn't have skilled enough carpenters to build the huge mansions that you see in South Louisiana. The only reason there's some bigger houses in Minden, like the Abnett House and things like that, was because those families came, they brought people up from up north who could reside in Minden and not be on an active plantation that required, constant, he wasn't just sitting here, on the front porch with a whip in his hand, drinking a mint julep. It didn't. He was out in the fields every day, monitoring, what was going on. He has a diary that I just read last weekend. He kept a farm journal from 1846 until he died in 1881. He wrote about everyday activities at the plantation. Calvin Leary, like I said, didn't only grow cotton. He grew wheat, he grew barley, he had over 1,000 peach trees. He made his own wine here and sold it. In 1857, I think, he killed 42,000 pounds of pork. He had hundreds of hogs, which he had hundreds of turkeys and chickens, and he was actually the only person I know of in this area to raise rice. That pond that you saw down the hill down there, that was originally built by him to raise rice. And nobody else was doing things like that. He tried citrus trees. He grew all kinds of lettuce and peas and corn and all kinds of things here that everybody else was growing cotton. He was growing, different crops that he saw and needed to sell, and that's how he became very wealthy.
Where'd you find this diary?
The diary is actually housed at the LSU archives. One of his family members, the Culberts, in the 1960s donated it to LSU, and I copied every piece of it. I'm going to have it, printed and bound to make it look like original one pretty soon. But it was very interesting to see that because it was amazing, what he was growing. He didn't write, unfortunately, about many things about the house, though, because they would have been like, well, why didn't you write when you built this, when you built that? I was kind of bummed. But he did write. The farming that went on here was amazing. He also had a thermometer, so he kept with the weather for every day. So it was amazing. Everybody's like, oh, it's so much hotter nowadays than it was back then. Well, Christmas Day in 1857, it was 85 degrees here. He said it was the hottest he ever remembered, so I don't think things have really changed that much. It's just, we're so used to air conditioning now, we're spoiled rotten. But Calvin Leary, it was really interesting. One day he wrote that it was hailing so large, it was between the size of a turkey and a goose egg, whatever that means. It was a constant, and there was droughts back then. He would say, we're praying for rain, we really need rain. Or one time he wrote, it was the hardest rain I've ever seen. So that was in itself, because I'm a weather nut, so I like weather. So it's kind of neat seeing that kind of things. But Calvin Leary actually owned 2,200 acres of land here. Of that 2,200 acres of land, he farmed about 1,000 of it in different different kinds of crops during different parts of the year. Actually, where Mr. Hawk's land is, all the way across the interstate, that was Calvin Leary's land. There's a old cemetery on the back side of it, and that's where the slaves are buried at. That was the original slave cemetery, and over the years, there's still family members buried there till today. There's also, where the Pennell Farm is sitting now, all that land that was originally cleared, that's now in pine trees, that was mainly where all his cotton was grown. So I mean, he had 2,000 acres, is a lot of land. But all his farming mainly was done to the west of the house and to the north of the house. To the south was mainly in swamp and timber, which he also had a sawmill. He had a cotton gin. He had a potato house. He had a wheat house. He had slave cabins. He had stable. He had it was like a
That's
village
why
here.
we saw those little
It
buildings
was a village around
years.
here, and they were all built very well. They weren't just thrown together, and they were built very well because they all housed different purposes. The original well is here. That's the well that you saw out
That's
there.
the one with-
It's 42 feet deep, solid bricks all the way down. One thing I do want to show you out here, because I think it's interesting
Okay.
about the house.